All right. Welcome, Bill. You're on.
In 2001, we thought that we saw an increase in shark attacks. It was dubbed the Year of the Shark. After the smoke cleared, we realized that we had seen not a shark frenzy, but a media frenzy. Talk show host Michael Shmerkanis asks whether we are really seeing an increase in bullying or whether we're simply seeing one more media frenzy. Whether bullying is increasing or not, cyberbullying is clearly a new phenomenon. It's not simply welcome to junior high. Last week I got a call while I was on my trip to London from a family member who reported that my favorite great-nephew was a victim of cyberbullying. Remembering how painful it was and mindful of the reports of recent suicides, I didn't take it lightly. In fact, I had written on the subject quite a bit, and so I decided to write to my nephew. Now, it's not often that 14-year-olds attribute members of my generation as having any wisdom, but he was quite relieved when he got my email, and he thinks that the words could well be shared with other people. Since I have written on it, and since this phenomenon is taking place in my space, I thought I'd use some time to talk about it this morning. At one level, bullying is simply the adolescent game of piling on any vulnerable appearing child. But it always involves abuse of power, power from strength, power from social status, or simply intimidation. The targets of bullying are selected almost at random, but usually for some difference, including body type, race, ethnicity, class, or dress. Gay kids are particularly vulnerable, but any vulnerable child may be picked on. Most picked on children will be called gay, whether they are or not. Even as tolerance for gays is high, it is still an effective epithet for growing kids. It's very, very difficult for them to deal with. Most schools are ill-equipped to cope with this increase in cyberbullying. They're going to have to create a zero-tolerance culture in advance, but by the time the schools realize that they have a problem, it's already too late. Needless to say, they are reluctant to take ownership of something over which they feel that they have little control. The principals of more than 40% of elementary schools and high schools report that they have a bullying problem. More than half of junior highs and middle schools report it. Schools have a special responsibility to provide children with a safe space. A child cannot learn if she's afraid. Cyberbullying includes gossip, disparagement, embarrassing pictures, unexpected forwarding of personal emails or text messages, abuses of trust, ostracism, ganging up, and threatening messages. While all of this is rude and abusive, most of it is intentionally hurtful, only the threats rise to the level of a crime. One of the things that sets cyberbullying apart is that it is not in the schoolyard. This enables schools to absolve themselves of responsibility. Most bullying takes place outside the adult view, but most of us also remember at least one teacher who was a bully. Another characteristic of cyberbullying is that it amplifies the audience. This increases the victim's humiliation, diminishes his safe space, and increases the bully's status and power. Indeed, the cyberbully is often simply playing to his audience with no real sense of the impact on his victim. While he may be known to his victim, the more clever cyberbullies and the more vicious ones tend to seek anonymity. So part of the difference in power between the cyberbully and his victim is that he knows a little bit more about the technology than the victim does. Cyberbullies also are exploiting information. They're not necessarily intimidating people, but they exploit embarrassing information about them. Bullying is so deeply ingrained in our culture as to seem almost inevitable. However, this is our space and our tool. Like any tool, it's subject to abuse. That's why we in security get paid the big bucks. It's our job to resist any abuse in our space and of our tools. It should not hurt to be a child. A child should not fear his peers or his parents, or fear to go to school. So there are a number of things that we need to be doing in this space in order to protect our children, to create an environment in which they can prosper and learn. First of all, we have to shine the light on this problem. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about instances when we see them. Bad behavior prefers the dark. We have to blame the bully, not the target. In my generation, there was a tendency to blame the victim of bullying much more than the bully, as though this was simply a rite of passage and something that everybody had to go through. Indeed, the target tends to think that there is something wrong with her, whether or not that's the case. We need to prefer restrictive policies, both in the internet and particularly within our homes. We should have whitelists for family members and trusted friends. We should be actively blocking the source of abusive traffic, and we should prefer service providers and software that provides granular control over who can send us a message. We should prefer moderated forums for our kids, and we should avoid Facebook and Twitter. Now, Facebook and Twitter are not the cause of this problem, but they are environments in which it takes. I forgot texting. We've got to be concerned about texting too. You ought to periodically look through the text messages that your children have received to understand whether or not they are getting abusive traffic. Facebook and Twitter and text don't cause the problem, but they are tools, and they are being abused in this space. Facebook was not intended for children. It was intended for college students and for adults. But in fact, it turns out that children just love it, and they're spending all kinds of time in it. And when it turns on them, they're always shocked and surprised. This nephew that I'm concerned about, I've been cautioning him about the things that can happen in Facebook ever since I've known that he was using it. And he always assured me that he was adult and that he knew what he was doing and that he could handle it. But it turns out that when it turns on him, as adult as he may be, the little child in him hurts. It's incredibly painful. We need to teach our children to protect their privacy. And that has to be taught. It turns out not to be natural. People are naturally gregarious. But nice people do not use the internet for intimate communications, and we need to teach them that. They need to be taught to err on the safe side. When I got back home this weekend, I got an update to my TomTom Navigator software. And one of the new features that was included under Navigate to was Navigate to the location in a photograph. I looked through my photos to see if I could find a recognizable location, and sure enough, I found the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I told TomTom to navigate to the Metropolitan Museum, and it immediately, without any hesitation, placed it on Fifth Avenue in the 80s. Knew exactly how to get there. We are having all kinds of advances in our ability to recognize electronically and recognize digitally images. If you search for my name in Google, Google will return dozens of pictures of me. Google has the capability to take a photo and search for other objects that are the photos that are of the same object. Now they've turned that off with regard to people while they sort out what the privacy implications of it are. But our kids need to understand that they are creating data every day now that can be turned against them at some point in the future. One guy even suggested that maybe what we needed to do was to allow kids to change their names when they got to be 21 so that they could disown all the stuff that had been written about them by other people in the past. We need to teach our kids never to acknowledge or respond to any abusive traffic. Now, we know that when we respond to spam, we're setting ourselves up, but we haven't necessarily taught our kids that that they set themselves up when they respond to abusive traffic. We need to reassure the targets, lest they become victims. Bullying is about the bully. It's not about the target. We need to identify the bullies. We need to stop them before they damage themselves. Bullying, like hacking, is addictive behavior. The more power the bully experiences when he bullies, the more likely he is to continue to do it. So we need to remember, he does not self-identify as a bully. The bullies don't understand that they are bullies. In fact, many of them think that they are victims. In summary, we need to remember that we are trying to teach our children to be responsible citizens for us of cyberspace, but we are trying in general to teach them to be nice people. Nice people do not bully. See you next week.